Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the webcast today on domestic and international trends in rehabilitation research, a comparative analysis. Our presenters today are Dr. John Stone and Mr. Dan Conley from the Center on International Rehabilitation Research Information and Exchange, CIRI, based at the University at Buffalo. Trends between research conducted in the United States and in foreign countries were investigated using data in the CIRI and the Rehab data databases. Priorities were identified in terms of the most published topics during the period 1997 to 2011. I'm your host, Joanne Starks, and I'm with the Center on Knowledge Translation for Disability and Rehabilitation Research, or KTDRR, part of the Disability Research to Practice program based at CEDL in Austin, Texas. The KTDRR is funded by the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research, and I'll be moderating today's webcast. A reminder for participants, there are some materials accompanying today's event that can be found on the webpage advertising the webcast. The presentation is available as a PowerPoint file as well as in a text version. The slides on the computer screen are small, so having the actual file or a printout could be helpful. If you have not downloaded the materials yet, you can go back to your confirmation email and click on the title of today's webcast. Scroll down that page to download materials. Please remember these materials are copyrighted and you must contact our presenters to ask permission to use any of this information. We would appreciate your feedback today by filling out a very brief evaluation form after the webcast. I will remind you about this again at the end of the presentation. Now I would like to introduce our speakers. John Stone, PhD, is the Director of the Center for International Rehabilitation Research Information and Exchange. He is also a Clinical Associate Professor of Rehabilitation Science at the University at Buffalo, State University of New York. In 1999, he founded the CIRI project and conceptualized the CIRI database of international rehabilitation research in collaboration with colleagues from the university's Health Science Library. Also joining us today is Dan Conley, MLS, who joined CIRI in 2006 after obtaining his master's degree in library science. He has a background in web design and accessibility and has redesigned both the CIRI database and website. I will now invite Dr. John Stone to begin the presentation.
Joanne, good to be with you again. Today's presentation will describe a study that sought to identify similarities and differences between rehabilitation research in the U.S. in comparison with global trends. The approach involved using the CIRI database of international rehabilitation research and NARIC's Rehab data, which is a database of mainly rehabilitation research in the U.S. Both databases use a common thesaurus, which makes it relatively easy to do a comparative analysis of U.S. rehabilitation research with research from outside the United States. The period that we chose is from 1997 to 2011, and the study was done in collaboration with NARIC, a NARIC-CIRI collaboration.
Okay, the CIRI database has over 150,000 citations in it. It is only international rehabilitation research articles. We don't have anything from the U.S. It includes materials from 1990 till the present, and it's just journal articles. There are some exceptions to this for various sub-projects that we do, but the primary database is only journal articles. And everything in there has been screened and imported by the CIRI staff who go out to other databases, except for there are a few publishers who send us their materials. And then we identify appropriate citations and then index them into our own database. Rehab data has over 96,000 citations, 68,000 of which are journal articles, and they are primarily U.S., although they do have some international articles as well. They include materials from 1956 to the present, and in addition to journal articles, they also have materials like books. And everything in the Rehab data database was sent to the NARIC staff, and then they imported it into their database. For this study, we looked at articles that were published between 1997 and 2011 inclusive, and we only looked at articles that contained at least one of 96 disabilities or conditions in the subject headings. With these criteria, SERI had 132,536 citations, and Rehab Data had 17,581, and we did restrict them to only use journal articles that were written in the U.S. From there, we generated a list of research topics based on our thesaurus, and to minimize the overlap, we focused on 96 specific disabilities or conditions. We did this because we wanted to try to get as many articles as possible to only have one subject heading that we looked at. Because this did have a health and function focus. And then from there, we assigned the rank of the topics in the database based on the frequency of publications. From there, we correlated the rankings between the two lists. We also looked at the top 10 topics in SERI and looked at their ranking in Rehab Data. Maybe we did the opposite. We took the top 10 topics in Rehab Data and looked at their ranking in SERI. We did this for the entire period of 1997 to 2011, and also for each 5-year period within that.
Here are some of the results. This table shows the Spearman-Rowe correlation coefficient for the entire period under study and for each 5-year segment within that period. Again, this is the correlation of the ranking of those 96 topics between the two databases. The overall correlation for the entire period was 0.52, a relatively high correlation, which is perhaps not too surprising. However, it is interesting to note that the strength of the correlation diminished over time, from 0.75 in the first period, 1997 to 2001, to 0.53 in the following 5-year period, and then 0.41 in the most recent period. These are the top 10 topics in each of the two databases. The numbers are expressed as percentages of the total number of citations for these topics in each database, rather than absolute numbers, since the databases are not of equal size. Some conditions, such as stroke and psychiatric disabilities, ranked high in both databases. Others do not. For example, spinal cord injuries rank second in Rehab Data, but is not among the top 10 in SERI. Dementia is high in SERI, but is not among the top 10 in Rehab Data. This slide shows the rank in Rehab Data for the 10 most published topics in SERI. Some topics have an almost equal rank in the two databases, but for others there is a wide discrepancy. This slide shows the results of the opposite analysis, that is, it shows the rank in SERI for the 10 most published topics in Rehab Data. Again, some topics have an almost equal rank, while there is a wide discrepancy in others.
There were some limitations to the study. We didn't look at all areas of rehabilitation research. We only did like the health and function aspect. So we did miss out on things like employment and assistive technology. We did this because we were trying to limit the amount of duplication of articles considered, because some articles, for example, could have been about employment of blind persons or assistive technology and stroke, and we were trying to count each article only once. Even so, some overlap may have occurred. There are also different levels of specificity. For example, psychiatric disabilities is a fairly broad topic that includes a number of more specific conditions. However, if we got rid of psychiatric disabilities, we would have lost some articles that it contained that were not in the more specific ones. And so we were trying to reduce, even if we couldn't eliminate it. The research or the numbers were based on the frequency of publication rather than the quality or importance of the research in the article. Even if something like arthritis was only mentioned briefly, it still has been counted as important as much as an article that's entirely about a subject.
The analysis identifies relative emphases in research in the U.S. and other countries that may reflect the effects of different policy and funding priorities. This initial analysis compared the U.S. with the rest of the world. However, the SERI database can be searched according to regions of the world as well as specific countries. So a more fine-grained analysis might compare, for example, the U.S. with Europe or with Asia, or a given country within a region. Or we could do country-to-country comparisons. For example, Brazilian colleagues have expressed an interest in working with us on a U.S. Versus Brazil comparative analyses. Many other types of analyses are possible using these two large databases. SERI would welcome suggestions for such studies that might be of interest to particular NIDR grantees or others, and would cooperate with them in such studies. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I want to thank both of you for your presentation today. And before we finish, I wanted to ask you, Dr. Stone, if you had anything else that you would like to add at this time.
No, I think we've focused on this study. There are other resources available on the SERI website as well as on the NARIC website, but this particular analysis was limited to the databases.
Okay, it was very interesting, and I think some of the ideas that you brought up there for future research sound very interesting as well, so hopefully we can follow up with you on those in the future. So I want to remind and encourage everyone to fill out the brief evaluation form to help us in planning future events. It just takes a minute, and you can do it right now when you sign off. You can click on the direct link to the evaluation form that's found on the last PowerPoint slide if you have the slides open, or if you can also get a link in an email that will be sent to you, and you can click on the link in that, excuse me, the evaluation link in that email. In the next couple of days, the archive audio-video file and a written transcript will be available and posted on the webcast page. And we will send email to everyone who pre-registered when these items are ready for review. I want to thank our presenters for their time, and we look forward to our next webcast sharing information from the SERI project. And finally, I want to thank the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research that provided funding for the webcast. And again, on behalf of our presenters and the SERI staff, myself and the rest of the KTDRR staff, thank you and good afternoon.